folks in the room and online. This is really enormous progress, the MTA Reform Act, and our collective efforts to bring more local input and perspective to MTA governance and to create greater accountability at MTA and MDOT to local stakeholders and system riders. The MTA Reform Act, as you know and you'll hear again, will
sunsetting this commission in favor of two commissions.
Last thing I want to do. We good? Yeah, I think we're good.
That's the residents of the result.
The residents, yes. Two boards, one a board of directors for Baltimore Core Services, which will be responsible for bus, metro, light rail, and paratransit in the Baltimore area, and also a commuter services advisory board, which will advise on MARC and MTA's commuter bus service. So that structure will replace this commission on October the 1st. And I just wanted to say a couple quick things about that, although we still have time together until we have two more meetings in July and September before that October date. So, while this commission has local representation appointed by the mayor and the county executives, along with other stakeholders, it's always been constrained by what is fundamentally and admittedly sometimes frustratingly an advisory role. MTA and MDOT have been good partners. I've always said that publicly and privately, but ultimately this commission's ability to exert any real control over regional transit services limited, especially with respect to budget priorities. In fact, the legislative work group that led to the MTA Reform Act recommended the Reform Act, had as its first problem statement, quote, "The Baltimore region has lacked direct or shared control over transit and governance decisions, enabling more local representation authority is essential." And the new Core Services Board will provide both of those. And I just want to say, and this is not the last time I'll say this or the last window of opportunity, but I wanted to say to the commissioners and everybody who's been supporting the work of this commission, this wouldn't have been possible without the work of this commission over the last several years and the many contributions. This has really been the foundation, I think, on which we're taking the next step. I said in that email that I just say a few other things supplemental of the meeting, so let me say those. We need to focus on what we want to do in the remaining months here in this commission. And, of course, we do an annual report, as folks will remember, every December. It's required to be delivered, and we, of course, will deliver it. But I'd like to take advantage of the opportunity. Have we lost folks online? Or is it just, yeah.
We're just trying to get the...
No, gotcha, thanks. I wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to deliver maybe an annual report in the form of almost a transition report, so that we can kind of hand the ball to the Core Services Board with respect to those items, and highlight in it the most pressing issues. That report obviously hasn't been written yet, but I assume it will need to cover things like the budget challenges that we've all been facing, the red line about which you'll be hearing more today, Be More Bus, which we've all heard about and for which people should take a lot of credit, having elevated that from the administrator to the commission and many other stakeholders. We want to highlight the work of the work groups, which have made progress on specific areas like MTA and schools. We'll hear more about that today. And I welcome the input of the commission. We will prepare a draft. We have time. We'll prepare a draft for your thoughts. But please be thinking about what you think ought to be included in there as we kind of hand the ball off. And a couple of specific things. Ideally, I think the BRTC has an opportunity to take a position and be helpful with respect to the red line and its future direction. We'll be hearing a lot more about that today, including sort of the first reveal of MTA's public outreach, which begins tomorrow. So I think we'll be getting here sort of some visibility into that not everybody's had the chance to see. So it would be great if we could talk about where the red line is going and how we can, in the remaining months of the commission, assist as it goes through the decision-making process. And then, with respect to the budget, which has been the topic of a lot of our discussions here, and really is, as I said, one of the big changes in the new structure is that the new Core Services Board is not going to be approving, I mean, the budget obviously, because of our structures, comes from MDOT, the governor's office, General Assembly. We don't raise our own revenues, we can't set our own budget, but I think the law goes as far as it can practically go. And what it does say, and I think folks know this, is that the new commission will be approving the budget request from MTA that goes to MDOT, and obviously that will have a significant impact, one hopes, on what the ultimate outcome is. That is not in the authority of this board. I'm not suggesting this board should have that authority in the remaining months, but at the same time, the CIP draft comes out in September, and this commission will still be in existence. And frankly, the worst of all worlds would be for kind of CIP and budget engagement to fall between the cracks as we transition from this commission to the Core Services Board in October. So I'll be talking with MTA, with MDOT, with others to try and figure out how we can manage that. We don't want to lose momentum. I think we've made real progress on engagement on the budget within the limits of our authority. But when that authority is changed, we don't want to skip a year. So we've got to figure out how to keep some enhanced involvement, and I'm hoping, expecting that we'll be able to find a way to do that with the new board arriving squarely in the middle of the CTP, but after the draft is released in September. So I just wanted to share a few of those kind of framing thoughts, and I'll open the floor if anybody has any questions or comments. But once again, this won't be my last opportunity to do this. Thanks to everybody for the hard work you've done to put us in a good position as we look to the next chapter of work here. Commissioners, any thoughts or comments you wish to offer? Hearing none? Okay. Well, we'll be hearing the substance, a lot of those, and again, you'll have a chance to look at and have input into the what we do for our combination annual report and transition memo. Before moving on, I also want to make one introduction. To my right, second to my right is Wayne Hybeck, who is the new chief of staff to the MDOT secretary, to Katie Thompson. I'm just gonna, and he's here today because secretary, unfortunately, is in, I think you said Salisbury, Wayne, at a memorial service for MDOT workers you may have read, who unfortunately were killed in the line of duty. And I think that Deputy Secretary is also involved in that. So they've asked Wayne to come. That is a bad reason for Wayne to be here, but it is good to have Wayne here so that he can see a little bit of what we're doing and we can get to put a face with a name, et cetera. So Wayne, I'm just going to give you a minute to just talk about your path to this role, please.
Thanks, John. Appreciate the welcome. So I am a recently retired federal servant for 36 years. That I retired in October. All of my experience was at the U.S. Department of Transportation. Had about 7 years with the U.S. Department of Transportation Office of Inspector General's office, where I dabbled in transit and highways, doing audits and telling others recommending to others what to do. But then quickly moved on to the Federal Aviation Administration, where I spent the rest of my career. I had the pleasure of working with Secretary Thompson once before, and when she was the Deputy Administrator at the FAA, which is essentially how I landed here. So thanks for the welcome, and I look forward to working with all of you and with Holly. Got a lot of big projects coming.
Thanks very much. Welcome. Okay, so with that, Don, do we have anything else administratively at the top of the agenda?
A couple of items at the end.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, well then we'll turn to the Administrator Arnold. Holly, would you please give us your report? Sure.
While Don pulls that up, there's just been a lot going on in the past couple months since we met, so I'm going to highlight some of the initiatives, but I'm sure I will miss a few things, so happy to take questions on anything that's not included. And then we'll have Caitlin and Stacy and Kate here to talk about some of the major projects as well, so I will highlight those because they're to cover.
Thank you.
So I'll start. April is Earth Month, and we celebrated Earth Day. This is our third year in a row with our Earth Day Youth Art Competition. So students across the region, or really across the state, are able to submit artwork, and we partner with those other jurisdictions, including education, to kind of judge that art, and then it goes up on one of our buses with a big unveiling. So that was really exciting to be able to share that. I happened to get lucky enough last night, and it showed up as my bus going home, so I got to personally see the art in action. We did also celebrate again free rides for the third or fourth year in a row on Earth Day, just as kind of our recognition of the importance of transit and putting that out there again. I mentioned this last time, but Transit Employee Appreciation Day is celebrated nationally, or really internationally, every year on March 18th. And that is in recognition of when the very first kind of fixed route service was started in Paris in 1662. It was a horse-drawn carriage at the time that carried 8 people. So transit has changed a little bit since then, but we do still want to recognize the people who run our services. So we did a big push throughout the entire agency going around and recognizing folks. I do want to do a couple specific shout outs. So our bus operator of the year is Terrence White from Bush Division, relatively new to the agency. I think he graduated within the past couple of years and just out there doing a tremendous job on a daily basis. And our rail operator of the year is Joseph Swan at Metro. He's been around a bit longer, but again, just kind of looking at the metrics and folks, showing up, complaints, compliments, all that fun stuff. Those are the ones who rose to the top. So we did some extra recognition from them. We also partnered with the Orioles for 410 Day. So we were really thrilled to be able to work with them on that. It was great to get the Oriole bird on the light rail. They were cheering on folks as they got off the train. So I think some folks kind of getting home from their commute on the Camden line were surprised with their cheers, and some folks were excited to see the Oriole bird come into the game. The Orioles also sponsored free transit on our core system, so Metro, Light Rail, and Bus for that evening. So we were really excited to partner with them on that. And we did see a bit of an increase over our normal kind of Friday night ridership through that sponsorship that they did. So we're really glad to keep partnering with the Orioles, and we look forward to continuing that work. On the transit-oriented development side, some of you were able to be at the event that we had at the beginning of April, where the new Baltimore transit strategy was released, and you guys have heard quite a few times about what TOD looks like at MDOT through Dave Zidane. So we announced that strategy, and then also announced at Rogers Avenue, which is where we were, that we're going to go out for looking for a developer to kind of redevelop the unused parking lots at those stations. So it's really exciting to see us trying to turn some of these unused parking lots or underutilized parking lots into housing and retail and all the other things that will help us to make our transit system thrive. We also were able to get folks on our new Metro rail car. So the governor and a lot of other folks were able to ride from Rogers Avenue into downtown and get to experience those new cars. Upcoming, Caitlin will talk quite a bit more about the Red Line open houses. Those do start tomorrow. The first one is going to be in Baltimore County in Woodlawn. So look forward to having a good conversation with the community about the next steps for that project. We are also, as always, continuing to celebrate Bike to Work Month and Bike to Work Week specifically. So we'll be participating with Baltimore City DOT in some of their rides. And we always host a table at Penn Station every year. So our team will be out. I believe it's this, I'll have to get the specific date for that, but they will be out at Penn Station doing giveaways, teaching people how to use our bike rack, making it easier to connect between transit and bicycling. One thing that we're excited to share this year is that our newest buses are coming with new bike racks. So they allow for the fat tire bikes. The current bike racks have a limit on the tires. And so what we're seeing a lot with some of the electric bikes is the wider tires. They also hold 70 pounds versus the 50-pound limit on our current ones. We're not changing the overall policy yet because there's only 10 of those that are out there, but as more kind of deployed, we'll be able to adjust the policy and let people know they can bring slightly heavier bikes onto the system. And then I did just want to highlight, MTA is hosting the American Public Transportation Association Rail Conference at the end of June, beginning of July. And so we'll be bringing somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 practitioners from around the country to Baltimore. So we're thrilled to bring them here, show off our system, and then obviously the economic development that they bring with that as they spend money at our bars and restaurants around downtown.
Where's the epicenter of that? Are like their meetings at a particular venue or something?
We're at the Hilton and then a little bit at the convention center. And then we are also partnering with the Preakness. It's down in Laurel this year to provide mark service. So if anyone is interested in going to the Preakness, you cannot walk up the day of and take mark. You have to buy a ticket in advance. So get your tickets now for that event. And then last, wanted to give a shout out every year again for the American Public Transportation Association. APTA holds their International Bus Rodeo. So this is where folks from around the country, operators and mechanics, are able to come out and show off their skills and compete to be kind of best in the country. So that is going to be in mid-May in Salt Lake City. So we want to wish our operator and our maintenance team good luck. So Sherelle Doughton is our operator. She's out of our Kirk Bus division. And then our maintenance team, they're a new team working together. This will be their first time going to the competition, but they're the Prepared Gears. Jared Gaithers, Brandon Wilson, and James Hitchcock will be there participating. So keep them in your thoughts and wish them well as they compete.
Send video.
And that's all I got. Happy to
Great.
take any questions.
Questions for the administrator? I know you have lots of other things you could cover, but you've got you got senior staff coming to do all sorts of presentations, so.
Yes, no, I think the other major things I would cover, we've got presentations on today.
Can I ask just a pure curiosity question? I mean, with the maintenance team that goes through the rodeo, like, is there a simulated, immediate repair breakdown kind of scenario?
Yes, so there are, don't quote me on the number, but somewhere between 6 and 12 stations that they go through. And so like there's one station where there's a door and they have to identify like what are the faults in that door.
Okay.
So they have 6 minutes to inspect and identify what the faults are. There's 2 different transmissions that they get to work through, and the goal is to figure out the fault and get the engine running. There's an overall just kind of inspection, and they basically plant faults in the system, and so identifying what those
It's
faults
like
are.
ninja training.
It is, yes, and each one is targeted, like they have 6 minutes, they're in, they're out. I can share video from the prior years, but it is really impressive. Like they say go, and like they don't even talk, they just go in and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. It's pretty cool. Yes.
Is there can you bring an e-bike on your bus?
Yes, so we allow e-bikes on all of our system. We do
As long as
have
they're
the
weighted
50-pound limit,
Oh,
yes.
that's 50.
Yep.
Yeah, so you're not getting many.
We do get some, and some people, the ones that have the removable batteries, will pull off the battery, put the bike on the front, and then keep the battery with them. And there's no weight limit on the Metro and light rail. You have to be able to carry it up on light rail, so that kind of limits, obviously some of the heavier ones. And then Metro, obviously they need to be able to control it. Mark has a very strict 50-pound limit associated with bike racks. I see Mike McMillan has his hand up.
Thanks. Mike McMillan, please.
Yes, good morning. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I'm at another conference dealing with E2U International, but I just wanted to also to recognize Holly, you and administration for stepping up and taking the lead for exploring the option of a completely enclosed bus operator safety barrier. Addressing the needs and concerns of the employees and our members at MTA. But I just wanted to, just as far as that as a highlight in which, like I said, the initiation of exploring that option at this time. And I want to thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and we appreciate the partnership on that. So what Mike is referring to is the operator barrier. So when you get on the bus now, we have a barrier on every bus. Sometimes it goes about halfway, sometimes it goes over the fare box. So it's kind of different ones, but we are exploring one in partnership with ATU. We're going to give them a bus and they're going to fit out a barrier that they have. And then separately, we have a procurement for to outfit 4 buses with a pilot for enclosed barriers. And again, the goal is preventing operator assaults and making our operators feel safe. So we're excited to see how that works out and where it goes.
Thanks. Okay, there's nothing else? All right, thank you, Holly. We have a very full agenda today, but Baltimore City has asked for the opportunity to give a short presentation on the water transit strategic plan, that been adopted, so we're gonna have a short presentation on that. Are you gonna tee this up for us, Veronica, or are you?
I got it.
Okay, they got it. We're good. Come on up.
Keep it short.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Brett Thorne. I am the Acting Assistant Deputy Director of Planning and Sustainable Transportation at Baltimore City DOT. I'm joined by my colleague Scott Fox, who's our Transit Services Administrator, and Harbor Master Mike McGady. We're going to give a brief presentation on the Water Transit Strategic Plan. So, kind of quick run through of what we're going to cover. What is the Water Transit Strategic Plan? It consists of a Harbor Connector service evaluation, so we're going to get a little bit into that. The Harbor Master operation and infrastructure evaluation. We're going to touch on Mike's operation and everything he's doing with the Inner Harbor. And then we have some key priorities and recommendations. First point, what is the Water Transit Strategic Plan? Great question. So this is actually kind of building off of a plan from about 10 years ago. We conducted a Water Transit Strategic Plan in 2015 that was actually run by DOT's own Veronica P. Macbeth. In a previous role with the city, we're not allowed to do a Water Transit Strategic Plan unless Veronica's with DOT. So she came back, and then a few months after she came on, we decided to do an update to this plan. So it consists of an operational analysis of the Harbor Connector. So we wanted to look at the ridership on the Harbor Connector, the route structure. Does kind of the system still make sense based on, shifts in employment location and residential patterns and things like that. It also consists of an operational analysis of the Harbor Master office, which Mike is going to touch on. His office was vacant for about 6 years. And we relaunched that office in 2024 and kind of looked at ways that we can start sort of modernizing it and sort of bringing it into the 21st century, really. And then lastly, it consists of an assessment of Inner Harbor infrastructure. So we want to kind of look at how the city is maintaining waterfront infrastructure. And of course, by that, we mean docks and bollards and kind of the obvious stuff. But then also we wanted to sort of look holistically at our infrastructure in the water. So we're also thinking of things like dredging, which we know is a pretty regular need that the city has. And so how can we sort of be strategic in how we're planning for some of this infrastructure maintenance stuff? So the first item here, Harbor Connector Service Evaluation. I hope that everyone on the commission is at least a little bit familiar with what the Harbor Connector is, but if you're not familiar, it is Baltimore City's fare-free ferry service that operates in the Inner Harbor. It consists of 3 routes. So you can see Harbor Connector Route 1 is sort of in the middle of the map there. It serves Locust Point and Maritime Park and just kind of ping-pongs back and forth Monday through Friday on that route. Harbor Connector 2, you can see, is Locust Point to Canton Waterfront Park. Same thing, it ping-pongs back and forth between those 2 stops. And then Harbor Connector Route 3 is kind of more into the heart of the Inner Harbor, and that goes back and forth between Federal Hill and Pier 5. You can see the ridership here on this slide. Harbor Connector Route 1 is by far kind of the heavy hauler route within the system. It averages, at least as of February 2026, it was averaging about 713 rides per day. Harbor Connector Route 2 is significantly lower ridership. That was about 58 rides per day on that route. And Harbor Connector Route 3 was about 162 rides per day.
February is a weird month.
February is a weird month. We kind of, yeah. What we tend to see is that ridership spikes as the weather gets warmer. So this slide right here is showing annual ridership on the system going back about 10 years. The kind of thing that sticks out to me is the sort of COVID dip there in 2020 and 21, where service was reduced pretty dramatically, and we saw ridership, of course, decline pretty significantly. I think the good news is you can see the trend ever since COVID is that we've been recovering ridership pretty steadily to the point where in calendar year 2025, we were pretty much right back where we were pre-COVID with about 318,000 rides on the system. And we anticipate that number continuing to rise in 2026. So this slide just kind of breaks down a little bit more granularly the ridership by route. And so you can see, again, Harbor Connector Route 1 is by far the kind of heavy hauler service within the system. it's got pretty significant ridership growth over the last 3 years. Harbor Connector 2 has been a little bit steadier, although it's had some modest growth. And then same thing with Harbor Connector Route 3. There's been a bit of growth there as well.
Are there other transit mode connections? Like, I mean, are there bike docks there at these stops?
Yeah, so you said like bikes?
Like, well, any other transit mode?
So the idea with the Harbor Connector is that it should sync pretty seamlessly with the Charm City Circulator. So like at the Harbor Connector stop at Maritime Park, we have a Charm City Circulator orange route stop that's less than a block away, kind of similar with the Banner route and Harbor Connector Route 3. So it's supposed to be kind of all part of an integrated system. And I actually did yesterday, I brought my bike onto one of the buses, onto one of the ferries. So we do have, if you're a cyclist and you want to use the service, you can bring your bike onto the boat. And so here I'm going to hand it off to Scott Fox to kind of cover some of the financial deep dive that we did as far as cost per ride, things like that.
So part of the plan was looking at where the service was most efficient and least efficient. And with every transit service, there's some sort of subsidy to it. So we calculated the cost per rider on an average from April 2025 and found that there are very few riders generally early in the morning or from 6 to 7 a.m. So the cost for the service was about up to above $50 per ride on HC2 and HC3, and as a whole in the system about $13. And then as the day went on, the cost per ride went down significantly, where on HC1 there were points where for every rider it only costs $1 the service. And in general, this was very low for transit. And overall, we found in April 2025 it was $3.33 per rider for the service, which is much lower than the cost per ride for other transit services in the Baltimore area, including MTA bus, Charm City Circulator, the Metro, and Light Rail, which generally average around about $5 to $9 per ride. Another thing we found was that there was a lot of ferry crowding where trips were occurring at capacity, especially traveling to Harbor East early in the early morning and late afternoon peaks, and then traveling back from Harbor East to Maritime Park. And we found that we needed a way to not have people be on that people were trying to get on that 822 trip leaving Locust Point to go to Maritime Park. There was a 61% chance that someone got turned away because the trip was at capacity and they would have to wait for the next trip. And so we found that that was an issue that we needed to address with this plan. And similarly, in the evening from leaving from the Maritime Park, we found that to be a case 36% of the time and at 5:15 in July of 2025. So as a result, at the start of March 2026, we made a change based on the plan's early recommendations to have HC2, which had less ridership and was less efficient than the other routes, especially in the morning, to now serve only a AM peak and PM peaks service of operating from about 7 to 11 in the morning and 4 to 8 in the early evening, and also serve not just between Canton and Locust Point, but also to connect to Maritime Park to pick up some of those riders during rush hour that were trying to get to Maritime Park or leave Maritime Park to reduce that crowding. We felt that was the most effective way to use HC2, as well as continuing to provide service to Canton during most of the day, while we also needed to reduce hours because of the cost per hour were increasing and our budget was not increasing. We also reduced service on HC3 just slightly by starting service at 7 a.m. instead of 6 a.m. because we didn't see that many riders in that first hour. And HC1 continued the same. So after the first month of this change, we feel that it has so far been a success. All the routes increased in ridership. HC2, in spite of losing about a third of its revenue hours, still increased in ridership, and which reduced overall has a 16% passengers per revenue hour increase, including a 72% passenger per revenue hour increase on HC2. I now turn to Mike McGeady, who will discuss our harbor master operations.
Morning, Mike McGeady. I'm the harbor master for the city of Baltimore. And in June of 25, the mayor relaunched the harbor master office in recognition of the water really being a sustainable mode of transportation. And as was mentioned, it had been 6 years since anybody was trying to take a holistic look at the waterfront and access to the waterfront, state of good repair for the infrastructure, and also kind of taking a look into the future of what a modern harbor is going to look like. So currently, we review existing wharfage and land use agreements that impact access to the waterfront. We do inventories of the maritime infrastructure, play a role in logistics for major events like the Sail 250, Maryland and Air Show Baltimore that's coming up in June, and also revamp the transient boaters' opportunity to come downtown and to dock at anyone at areas about 5,000 square feet or lineal feet of Baltimore City municipal piers. So these are the locations you see on the screen. Inner Harbor, relating to what we call the West Wall, Pier 1, Pier 3 through 6, and then in the historic district in Fells Point, Broadway Pier, as well as a piece of the Thames Street bulkhead and Ann Street Pier. One of the things we're taking a look at, being a maritime city, doing peer reviews of other ports, is the idea of some future moorings around the middle branch and northwest branch of the Patapsco. So that's in our future study. Regarding infrastructure, we need, based on where our harbor is located against the fall line and the Jones Falls, we get a lot of shoaling there. So every 4 years or so, we need to do some dredging in order to maintain the ability for large vessels to come to Baltimore. And we are the deepest water port closest to Washington, D.C. So there's a lot of activity with either modern naval vessels or sail training vessels internationally. And the naval attaches and the ambassadors like to bring their ships to Baltimore and then have events. So it's very much a economic development tool to have this ability. So the nuts and bolts of the bollards and life rings and cleats and ladders that we do regular review of, and the federally maintained channel actually ends right at Domino Sugar. So a lot of the care and feeding of that piece of water from Domino all the way into the West Wall belongs to the city of Baltimore. So numerous wharfage agreements over the years that generate money to the general fund came in to do an assessment of those, and those, as you might imagine, over the years, all are different, all have different terms. So trying to get a handle on where the money is, where it goes, and how we can then leverage some of that and bring it back to maintenance of the infrastructure that supports the use in the first place. So I'll move now to our key recommendations and get Brett to start.
Thanks, Mike. Yep, I'm back. Harbor Connector Route 2. So as Scott mentioned, we did recently implement a change on that. That's kind of the :1 recommendation as far as the Harbor Connector service goes. We did turn it into a peak-only service. So the route operates in the mornings until about 11:25, and then goes out of service until about 3:50 p.m. and then comes back into service. As Scott showed, so far the ridership numbers are really encouraging. We've actually seen a net increase in ridership, despite, reducing the hours a little bit in the middle of the day. I think there's a lot of interest in people getting from Maritime Park over to Canton and vice versa, just kind of on one boat. So I think we kind of credit some of the increase in ridership with that. Another second recommendation is completing the ferry landing improvements that had initially been planned to be executed through a fiscal year 2022 discretionary grant. That grant was ultimately frozen and clawed back by the federal administration, but we're sort of taking a throw everything at the wall sort of approach in terms of funding, and we're pressing on and trying to look for other sources to help us fund that. We have several grant applications that are either out right now and being reviewed or that are being developed as well. The third recommendation is to launch weekend harbor connector service. We did do a survey as part of this study, and the biggest kind of want from the public was weekend harbor connector service. So people are really looking for a way to get around the water on the weekends. We actually did a pilot project where for 2 weekends in December, in partnership with Waterfront Partnership and the Baltimore Development Corporation, we did run weekend harbor connector service to support some just activity around the water. The feedback was really encouraging. We got significant ridership, even despite, December on the water might not be quite as nice as like July on the water, but people still came out. They were really excited to be out on the water. So that was great. And then the last kind of priority recommendation we have here is just to consider additional harbor connector routes. We looked at expansions to Riverside, Baltimore Peninsula, Cherry Hill, Westport. Those are all considered within the plan. And so, as funding and capital becomes available, maybe consider expansions of the service to serve those areas. And I'm going to hand it back over to Mike to touch on Harbor Master recommendations.
Yeah, thanks. So a review of those wharfage agreements would seem to lead us to an opportunity to centralize management of those agreements under one agency, to be determined, but it would make sense to bring all those under one consistent oversight. We definitely document our state of good repair, which is particularly interesting in working with projects like the MCB redevelopment of the Inner Harbor Park and Promenade. We work with, of course, the Department of Real Estate on our state of good repair, and also look at, as I mentioned, revenue potential for future added service. I think it's interesting. We did have a tough ice year, but the harbor connector continued to run throughout that. And we have an eye toward some additional security in the harbor, and then hoping to add maintenance dredging as a regular planned activity rather than something that becomes reactive. So with that, you have a QR code here for folks to view the Water Transit Strategic Plan, and happy to answer any questions.
Well, thanks very much. I mean, obviously, this is in a way outside our scope, but we'd be happy to, if you want to let us work on this too, just tell us, and we're sure we have some ideas. But that said, it is an important connector, literally. And congratulations. I asked Veronica what we did when there was no harbor master, and I'm not sure the answer to that is very affirming. But welcome. I've seen it. Thank you. But it's good. You can only do what you can do. So, and I've seen you present before. So it's really important to get this all organized. And I think from our perspective, the questions are mostly about how does this connect? I think you heard that question from Scott. How does this connect and help create a connected network of accessible transit? I do know many people. I talked to someone just the other day who said he lived in, I'll say it was Federal Hill, but we're somewhere south of the harbor, and he said every day he takes the water taxi to Harbor East where he works every day. That's his commuting. So obviously it works. Question is
You
how.
can set your watch by the service.
So are there questions for the commission?
I just have one for Mike, I guess, and it's more related to, state of good repair and maintenance and climate change.
Yes.
And what adjustments or evaluations are you doing with respect to climate change impacts, on the wharf and the entire harbor?
Yeah, it's interesting. So there's a 2023 baseline services agreement with Waterfront Partnership, the Waterfront Management Authority. And under that, DOT has a very broad maintenance responsibility, including the promenade, piers, electrical, painting, fences, and even fountains, if you would believe that. But I know that MCB in their research, and one of the key project goals is to, you're gonna end up elevating that promenade to address future nuisance flooding. So in some of their solutions, you have to look at floating facilities versus fixed. But there's definitely things that are changing as far as frequency of flooding events. And we all remember Isabel and water, across Lake Street. So they are addressing some of those in their design. And then we work kind of with the developer to try to strike a balance between what's good for a pedestrian and what's good for a working waterfront, which is what we have as far as cruise lines and the nonprofit groups that operate education and training on the water. Chesapeake Bay Foundation bringing kids to the aquarium. So we have to kind of maintain, there's a dynamic tension, I think, between what's good for a pedestrian and what is good for a working waterfront.
The harbor connector ferry landing improvements that I mentioned, we have conceptual designs for those, and those are all planned to be floating facilities for that exact reason. Our landing at Locust Point, for example, my understanding is it used to happen once every couple of years. Now it's about once a year, maybe twice a year. It ends up underwater for part of the day during like extremely high tide events. So we're kind of working on the resilience of that because we are seeing that stuff is starting to kind of manifest itself a little bit.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, yes, of course, please.
Yeah, when you're considering new routes and new stops, are you looking at existing transit in those stops? Are you looking at development in those stops? How are you making those?
Yeah, so I would say we met several times with our planning department to kind of get a sense of what is planned around the waterfront and the northwest branch and the middle branch of the Patapsco, and especially the middle branch. We kind of built our conceptual routes around some of the planned developments and things like One Westport and things like that. The driving factor, but then of course the existence of like MTA light rail through that area, that was a major sort of like, okay, we want to make sure we can connect people with that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your professionalism and your commitment to this. It's great to have you all working hard on these important connections. I mean, it's an important asset of the harbor. Okay, well, let's move on. Our next presentation is a red line update. I think Caitlin Tobin, project director, is going to lead that.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, good morning, commissioners. Thank you for having us here today. As John mentioned, my name is Caitlin Tobin. I'm the project director for the Baltimore Red Line. And it's a really exciting time for this project. We have a big year ahead of us. So I'm really excited and feel fortunate to be here in front of you all this morning to give you an update. So just the arc of this conversation, we're going to be talking about really some of the options we have in front of us to advance the Red Line project. But we want to start with just reminding us why we're doing this project. What are our guiding goals? We've had significant, I guess, challenges, but also opportunities in those challenges in the last year or so. This project, as you all know, was a funded project in 2015 that was unfortunately canceled. Like many folks, it appears to be in this room at that time, I was working for Director Macbeth. I was in Baltimore City DOT's Transit Bureau when it was canceled, but also had the fortunate opportunity to be in the consultant team when this project was relaunched. I was standing in the West Baltimore Mark parking lot in the July heat, 8 months pregnant, and just excited to be there for it. And you know, about this time last year, was able to join MTA and have this awesome responsibility for the project. So just want to talk about what's changed though since that relaunch, since 2024, and where the opportunities lie. And as noted in some of our press, we have a couple of different approaches to advance the project, including continuing on our full light rail path. We have looked at what phasing light rail could look like, and then also revisiting the mode of bus rapid transit. And then I want to talk through engagement. We have a bit of content about how we're going to be talking about this with the public and the milestones ahead of us. So the reason to do this project and the goal to do a great transit project, to provide great east-west connectivity, has not changed. It's important for connecting communities, connecting services, and also supporting all of the region's growth and economic opportunities. At MTA, many of our customers, when they're riding transit, they're either going somewhere to spend money or make money. And so that makes transit a huge part of our economic fabric and prosperity ahead of us. And so that commitment to deliver a premium east-west high-frequency transit project does not change with any of these approaches. But as many of you know, we've been in a very different federal and national landscape lately. And to put a finer point on what that has meant for our project specifically, federal transportation grants, they've been threatened, they've been canceled. Investment priorities as a whole are changing. Inflation and tariffs, we talk about them affecting our groceries. On a 14-mile mega project, these types of things really pose serious cost risks. We are seeing on other projects, contractors factor that risk into their pricing and prices only increase. The bill more commonly known as the IIJA bill, it's expected to expire in September. We're tracking what's going to happen with that bill, but it's another uncertainty as far as the main source of federal funding for major transit projects like this. Our primary assumption is that this project would be in the Capital Investment Grant Program. This is the major source of funding for mega transit projects like the Red Line. There's about 48 projects in the CIG program. 33 of those projects are BRT projects, and we're seeing even in the last year, several cities and major regions decide we're not pursuing light rail anymore. We are only pursuing BRT projects because of that cost efficiency. And so we're seeing a real signal of industry shift towards BRT. And lastly, no projects have entered into what's called a federal funding and grant agreement since January of last year. That tracks with the last Trump administration, where they didn't do any funding grant agreements for the first 3 years of their term. But there's a lot of opportunity in what is the challenges ahead of us. So Red Line construction, it needs to coexist with a lot of other transit needs in the regions, and reimagining it and really revisiting a mode like bus rapid transit has a couple of synergies. First is we can deliver a BRT project sooner and support that economic growth that's happening much sooner with premium transit. It also provides financial capacity and synergies with other transit needs. One example would be more bus plan, which I'll go into more detail. There's also more capacity to advance a future BRT network. In the time to do one light rail line, Minneapolis and Indianapolis has delivered 3 very high quality BRT lines. And then also we have heard concerns about the disruptive nature of light rail from communities. And we think we can deliver a transit project with similar performance and with less disruptive impacts. And we have some numbers to really back that up. So as we mentioned, we have a couple different approaches. Each of these have different cost timelines and risks associated with them. So we can stay on a long-term course of light rail. That's around $4.7 to $9 billion, really driven by the downtown tunnel, and 9 to 12 years to deliver. We have taken a look at what a phase one version of the light rail project could look like. That's closer to 2.2 to 2.5 billion, but still around that 9-year mark to deliver. And those upwards arrows of cost and time is because for phase 2 and 3, with that longer delivery horizon, you're really adding a lot of uncertainty where we really don't know where that upward limit is for cost and timeline. And then we do want to revisit bus rapid transit with the public, with our stakeholders, because we've really sharpened our pencils on what a project could look like for around $1 billion and deliver in about 5 years. So phasing light rail, what we've done here is really assess what is the shortest light rail segment we could do that could still be competitive in the capital investment grant program. You have to score at least a medium high based on cost efficiencies, ridership, land use, many factors that play into a score to be able to even enter into the program. We also need a certain amount of space and needs at each of at the end of the lines. So we've identified Edmondson Village to Marketplace as a potential opportunity for phase 1, with phase 2 out to the county and phase 3 to the southeast. It would involve a lower initial cost. However, we do continue to have concerns about the delivery of phase 2 and phase 3, just because of those extended delivery horizons really elevates risk. So BRT, bus rapid transit, it really, when we say that word, it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. In this country, we talk about BRT. Those projects are labeled as just bus corridors that maybe have a couple of bus enhancements, all the way to some of the nationally leading BRT projects that are where most of the corridor is exclusive right-of-way. And that's really the type of project we're talking about. So everything you see in red along this corridor, that's where there would be exclusive or dedicated right-of-way for the vehicles to travel through. I have a couple of examples to show what that looks like visually. In strategic places, we have looked at mixed traffic where we really have some major constraints. And one beauty of BRT is we have the flexibility to do that. But we've done that very strategically. We looked at from Cook's Lane to through most of the southeast where we can get exclusive or dedicated right-of-way for the entire corridor, which produces very similar travel time and customer experience at a much lower cost and a much faster construction pace. And I'll acknowledge, the next set of content really focuses on BRT because of that broad discrepancy that's out there about what BRT is. We want to be clear when we say we're revisiting BRT, what the type of project is that we're talking about, so we can compare them apples to apples. And we're really looking to do a nationally ranked BRT project. And by that, we back that up with numbers. The image you saw that had mostly red, that's 80% of the corridor having at least exclusive or dedicated lanes. And when I say exclusive, I mean it's physically separated from traffic. So that's distinctly different than the bus lanes you see on North Avenue, on Lombard Street. There would be a median barrier between the lane for vehicles and the lane for general traffic. And these are the top 5 BRT projects in the country based on that percentage of dedicated exclusive lanes. We would comfortably be in that top 5, and notably the Hartford, Connecticut, LA, where it's 100%. Those are actually their own roadway on former rail right-of-way. And I just noted because that is different than trying to really work a project like this into such an urban context. We can also deliver a lot of streetscape improvements a lot sooner with this project. We're really talking about a back of sidewalk to back of sidewalk, 14-mile streetscape project. So about 20 miles of new sidewalk. We would improve or add over 500 new pedestrian crossings. We would upgrade all the signals along the corridor and resurface much of the corridor, improving not only movement of transit, but also traffic and pedestrian and bikes as well. This is all infrastructure that is really needed in a lot of parts of the corridor and contributes to quality of life. So these are just a couple of visuals to show what this can look like visually. So this is an example by Security Square Mall. Again, we're largely delivering a very similar plan as light rail, where we'd be running an exclusive right of way in the median. This is a very preliminary rendering of the Security Square Mall redevelopment. The county has two active RFPs about this development project. So this is just for a visual effect. But again, that opportunity to integrate with that development and provide premium transit sooner is a real opportunity we could deliver on. Edmondson Village, at the redevelopment that's happening at that shopping center has a lot of investment. A lot of those things are in construction or already constructed. And we've heard a lot from the community about the concerns about the pedestrian environment and being able to cross Edmondson Avenue. We could do a really nice streetscape project, again, similar to Security Square, where you have center running, exclusive lanes, looks and feels very similar to a light rail, and also improve a lot of the pedestrian experience in this area as well. This is just a visual representation of some of the scope of work that's expected with the West Baltimore United. That planning effort is expected to wrap up this summer, and there's $160 million grant of combination of grant and local funding to support infrastructure investments like taking down the US 40 ramps, improving pedestrians and street safety throughout this area. And as a light rail project, we would be coming behind this project years later. As a BRT project, we can come through here much around the same time as this project would probably start construction and really have some synergies and cost efficiencies in how we can deliver both of these projects for the community. Downtown Rise is a very popular plan and a big commitment as part of supporting a lot of the downtown redevelopment that's happening. Harbor Place is notably one of them. The Pratt Street component of Downtown Rise alone is about $25 million, which is part of a BRT project that we could start construction around the same time Harbor Place is under development. We could really deliver the vision of Pratt Street that's outlined in Downtown Rise, and again, do that sooner versus years behind a lot of this development and provide, again, premium service much sooner to the downtown area. Where you see on this image, street trees and pedestrian scale lighting for surface running light rail, you would see overhead wires and catenary. We do think there's real ways to get through constrained areas like Fells Point with BRT in a way that provides similar transit service, but we can mitigate some of those concerns about having vibration, noise, and also overall parking and streetscape impacts. And this is just a final example in Canton. We looked at, again, where we could maybe add stations. We're looking at adding a station on Cooks Lane. There's 3 potential stations we could add in the southeast, including the waterfront, Brewers Hill, and Greektown. That flexibility of BRT and the length of station platforms really allows us to provide more access to these amenities in these communities. So I mentioned synergies with Be More Bus, and there's some operational synergies and there's also financial ones. So as you can see, that bottom large bar, a red line light rail really sucks a lot of air out of the room in terms of financial capacity. But red line BRT and a full implementation of the Be More Bus plan from a capital perspective is about a $2 billion program. And there's a lot of synergy, again, between the operations and financial components. So the first is the Be More Bus plan is largely dependent on the building of 5th Bus Division. Big capital investment. There's some images there of why it's such a big capital investment. It's where the buses sleep. It's also where we have a lot of major infrastructure to maintain them, charge them, refuel them. And so there's a lot that goes into that project. 5th Bus Division would also enable Red Line BRT to most effectively operate. Our current 4 bus divisions are at or over capacity. Right now, they're 97% to 103% in terms of bus storage today. Financially, too, there's not a lot of great discretionary federal funding opportunities for standalone bus divisions. So If we were to just pursue fifth bus division on its own, we could maybe get 4 or 5% of that covered with a federal grant. But coupling the Red Line BRT project and the fifth bus division together into one capital investment grant program, while it raises the overall cost of the project, we would still be competitive in the CIG program, and we could get 40% as opposed to 5% of that bus division cost covered. And this is just a visual representation of what all these investments need, not just Red Line, but Red Line BRT. Everything in yellow is the fifth bus division, what it would support in terms of better bus service throughout the core service area. That's everything in yellow would have 10 minutes or better bus service. And then we're proud to have our new Metro cars. We have light rail modernization program, which you'll hear more about, and really delivering all this to support a lot of investment that's already happening in the corridor. The Red Line alone is expected to amplify and support $12 billion of planned or speculative economic development. And there's many, many other things like Reisterstown Plaza, Rogers Avenue, where the state is investing on seeing a TOD return in those areas. So for next steps, I'm on my last few remaining slides, just about our approach, how we're gonna have this dialogue with the public. As Mr. Arnold mentioned, we do have open houses coming up. Our first one's tomorrow. And we're gonna present all 3 options to the communities and stakeholders. We have other ways that we're engaging beyond these open houses. That will be at every community association along the corridor. We go to their meetings and meet the community where they are. Same with pop-ups. We're gonna have an official 90-day comment period. We are looking at the possibility of doing a peer city tour. We understand that BRT is not something we've done in this region, and we want people to look, see, and feel it. And then we also have a really strong community advisory team who's an incredible asset to our team in terms of advice and input. And we want to do this in a way where we're very clear about the trade-offs and outcomes of each of these options. And so how we're handling that public discussion, we're really talking about the trade-offs between continuing to pursue either of the light rail options, and then the opportunities for a quicker project or a quicker, less expensive, but also synergistic project with Be More Bus. We're trying to preempt the question of why can't we just wait? Why can't we just wait for the next perfect storm to come together for a light rail project? And we want to be clear, there is a cost of delay beyond the risk of that perfect storm never coming. We've already seen these prices go up from 2015. Just basic inflation, a 5-year delay of our cheapest version of light rail could add over $800 million to the overall cost of the project. But even more than that, the biggest cost that is borne is our current riders in our region. Every year, the residents along our corridor lose about 57,000 hours collectively per year without having access to faster, better transit. And it's costing the region, or residents in the region along this corridor, about $27 million per year in additional transportation costs by not having that same access. We get a lot of questions about economic development, and there's a belief that economic development is more likely around light rail, and the data and research really doesn't support that. Economic development around transit requires holistic planning. There are places like the Cleveland Health Line that realized $9 billion in economic development return that they attributed to their health line, so much so that the hospitals actually fund part of the operations annually. And that $9 billion number, it's been around for 18 years. They actually stopped counting the amount of economic development this line is spurring because they said the story's good enough. Minneapolis Gold Line, Richmond's Pulse, they've seen similar results, but all these took land use changes, good policy, money. So it's really more complex than the mode itself. What we've heard from developers in Maryland and outside, it's really the permanency of the transit that attracts the development, along with good policy and good land use applications. We also want to talk about performance and impact with communities. This isn't just about dollars, but about what the customer needs, what the customer experience is going to be. And really the driving factor of that is how long is it gonna take me to get somewhere? So we've really done our homework on what travel time looks like, and in many cases, the travel time is similar. So this is an example around the Edmondson Village, Rosemont area. We're looking at a 20 to 21 minute travel time for a light rail from Edmondson Village to Charles Center on light rail. And conversely, the same BRT project is about the same, about 21 minutes. And the trade-off in impacts is because we would need a vehicle maintenance facility in this area for light rail, we would need to acquire about 7 properties, whereas we would not need to acquire any in this area. Similarly in the southeast, where we see a bit more of a trade-off with time, that's largely because we're adding 3 stations. There is some mixed traffic we're proposing in this area, but we are also adding a lot more immediate access to communities. So we're seeing about a 6 or 7 minute difference, and significantly less property impacts and more access.
Yeah, can I ask you a quick question on the 2 slides? So if you go back go back one more. So the map is showing Edmondson to Harlem Park, but the actual assessment there is from Edmondson Village to
Charles
Center. You might want to clarify that. Just it wouldn't be clear necessarily from the slide itself. And I think it makes a difference because what is that? Maybe that's 2/3 of the distance to downtown. I'm not sure, half, 2/3, something.
Well, yeah, so Edmondson Village, just Charles Center. The idea is to give folks, when they're at that board, an idea of, I live here, how long does it take me to get to downtown? We're like equipping our folks with quite a bit of more data about that.
Yeah, just that the slide arguably implies that the travel time you're specifying is from Edmondson Village to Harlem Park, not to downtown. It is to downtown, you're saying?
It is to downtown.
Right.
Yeah.
And then on the second slide, what is that, downtown to Bayview? I'm trying to I'm just trying to match up the data with.
Yep, of course. So downtown to Bayview is about 21 to 22 minutes with light rail that does assume surface light rail. And then for bus rapid transit, it's about 28 minutes.
Thank you.
Great questions. So just to go through our plan, next steps, we announced our open houses. They start tomorrow. We are looking at doing a Pier City tour later this summer. And the arc of this really concludes with we want to make a decision by the end of the year, re-engage the public on a preferred project directions, and also provide a summary of what was the feedback we heard, so that we're transparent throughout this process. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. That's a lot of information, and I'm sure people do have questions or comments. So let's start. Commissioners, pardon me. Does anybody have any questions or comments they want to offer? Caleb?
Got a few.
Please.
First of all, that's a lot of information. Thank you very much for that. The first thing I noticed is that in the BRT alternative, and it was almost in your last comment, there's no stop at Charles Center. And one of the aspects and one of the promotions of the light rail mode was that there would be this great connectivity of the systems, and that it would connect to the metro and to the light rail and to the MARC train. And one of them is being taken away in this alternative. So I just wanted to note that.
So I just want to know, we're looking at Pratt Street here, so even light rail was not going to connect to Charles Center, but the connection Metro is made at Shot Tower. It's a marketplace in Shot Tower, and there's a direct connection.
Maybe I'm looking at an old light rail plan there, because the one that I've been through this since the Red Line Compact, so this is a long arc of, I've been through generations of considerations, so I may be looking at
I think the original one, looking at a tunnel, did have about a 700-foot tunnel into Charles Center. What we've been looking at with the surface options, there was one that was a couplet on Lombard in Baltimore, so like one would have a direct connection, one would be a block walk, and then the other option we were looking at is on Pratt Street.
Okay. Secondly, I would be careful about the comparative, the comparisons between the health line and the orange line and the ones. The health line was built in a city that was largely vacant, and so while there was been $9 billion of investment, most of that came as a result of the helpline, but the construction, the ease of sort of the disruption was much less on the helpline because there was nothing there to disrupt. And the orange line goes to the San Fernando Valley. So I would want to maybe look at some closer comparisons to dense urban environments, just so you can do more of an apples to apples comparison on BRT as an option. I think it would just be helpful, and I think those types of tours that you talked about would also be really helpful. When the first iteration of the light rail came about, there was this transit across the nation where we took loads of people from Baltimore that build the idea and the culture around accepting transit and accepting the disruptions that transit can provide. So we took trips to Portland and LA and Boston and other places. So I think Richmond would be a really good example as sort of an older industrial city, which is more apples to apples comparative analysis. Maybe Hartford might be a good one too. But I would tend to be a little bit more depending on the range of people who pay attention to this. The people who are more urbanists would be like, I've been on the Helpline and I've ridden it and I've seen it when it was under construction and there was nothing there, so I can understand how this could be easier to do and I can understand the benefit that inures from it. But I would just recommend that as a point of observation.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. The Helpline is one of the oldest BRTs in the country, so it does have a lot of that history we're able to learn from. And it does go through a CBD, which is useful, but I appreciate that feedback and we can take that under consideration.
Thank you. Others? Yes.
If BRT became the preferred approach after public input in all of these processes, can you talk a little bit more about how that would interact with Be More Bus in terms of the timeline? Would the hope be that would Be More Bus would remain the priority, or that they would move forward together in the future?
Yeah, ideally they would. So they would move forward together. And again, the real starter of Be More Bus being able to be implemented is that 5th bus division. The Be More Bus plan proposes expanding service by about 25%. That is not really possible until there's a 5th bus division and more capacity from a maintenance and division standpoint. So that first point would be part of what that first point of 5th bus division would move in parallel with the Red Line BRT project, and then also be the starting point for the Be More Bus plan implementation.
Other questions or comments from members? Please. Yeah,
So overall, thank you for the presentation, and I think very well put together. I think I say this every time, but on the one hand, I appreciate that you've really added the economic development component. I'm just gonna keep saying, push it up in the presentation. I think it's an important part of the story. I want to echo the Pier City Tours comment. Having worked in other markets, I think it's invaluable, and I think that ensuring that it's a cross section of types of stakeholders matters just as much. I do think that your Minneapolis example, I'm familiar with that one directly, and I do think that is very apples to apples, because they had started with light rail after really missing the heavy rail, and then had converted to BRT. And I think that piece is a story here that matters a lot, because I mean, you hit on it, very thoroughly. There's a perception of BRT, but I think honing in on, I would make the entire presentation about trade-offs. You had like 1 or 2 slides on it. I think that to just reinforce from an economic perspective that we are operating on an international supply chain around transit, and that really is going to limit our ability to manage our, getting the supplies, but also the cost. You had some of those estimates. I think that those could exponentially increase over the next few years, including just the ability to access it at all. So I think that really focusing on if we want to implement in a restricted environment, and a lot of your stats about the federal funding and the supply chain, I think, are spot on, is just really to say the opportunity to build is a narrowing window. And being able to push that forward with BRT, I think, is something that I'll then shift gears and say, I think this body, or the next iteration of this body, really has to be sounding the call and providing some leadership around why that engagement matters and elevating or at least separating the conversation of how do we actually get to implementation separate from the perception of the aspiration of what this could be and what could have happened, you know, if this had been done, you know, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So I do think this body and the iterative nature of what comes next really is gonna have an important role in that. So I just wanted to reinforce that.
I just got a couple of comments. I think it's a very good presentation. I guess my sort of superseding question is, you present these as alternatives. I guess I would ask, is something really an alternative if it's impossible to achieve? Because because at the end of the day, you know, it is just, it's hard to imagine how we can successfully produce a light rail project in the current environment. Light rail is great, and it would have been great in 2015 for sure. It would have been great if we hadn't given back $1 billion, but we did. Somebody did. And, you know, I mean, so I think you're doing this correctly. I mean, you absolutely need to do this in the way you're describing it. But I would just sort of point out that, and in a way, they're engineering alternatives, but they're not like really, they're not feasible alternatives. It has to be feasible to really be an alternative. But that said, you can't say if light rail is infeasible, let's do BRT because it's the other thing, right? You then have to analyze whether BRT delivers the service that you want it to deliver. And I've been pushing this question for a long time throughout this process. I've been pushing MTA and others. And you know, I think BRT continues to evolve rapidly, and I'm becoming more and more convinced that properly done, BRT can achieve the same outcomes or substantially the same outcomes as light rail, surface running light rail. I understand tunnels are tunnels, and I think tunnels are even less feasible than that. That just adds another addition of another aspect of infeasibility to a light rail option. So if BRT can deliver, as you say, premium service, and there's a burden on MTA or whomever the advocates are to demonstrate that it can deliver service at that level. But if it does, especially when compared with the alternative, which is we can't do the alternative, it becomes very compelling. So I don't think we're at a point where we have enough information to say, let's do BRT, but I think we have a framework for me that sort of establishes what the test is. And the test is, can you do it in a way that is substantially similar in terms of quality and travel time and so on. And I think I'm starting to see indications that we can. The other thing I wanted to say is that we have to give people better insight into what modern BRT looks like. I'm not suggesting anybody should be overselling it or gilding it, but I just know that in Baltimore, people largely have not had the chance to experience high quality BRT. It just depends randomly on whether you've traveled and whether you also travel to the places that have it. So the idea of seeing peer places and other things, and also just producing, and you just started to do it, but producing some imagery and some videos and whatever you can do to get the word, to get people to see what it is, because modern BRT looks a lot like light rail without rails. And in terms of stations, in terms of the quality of the cars, in terms of the overall experience. And at some point, it becomes sort of like, it's like an abstraction, if you're in an environment that gets you from here to there in the same amount of time, and it's high quality, the vehicles are high quality, and the station experience is high quality, and you have the dedicated lanes, Baltimore City has to cooperate with that, the counties have to cooperate with that. But if you have all of that, once you sit down, you don't know if there's a catenary overhead or rubber wheels underneath you. It's all about the service delivery. And also importantly, the bias that people have because of totally reasonable bias people have because of their lived experience with buses. And it's not about, I'm not saying MTA buses or Baltimore buses. It's not about that. It's got nothing to do with MTA. It's just the general urban non-BRT bus experience kind of is what it is. And we do, I think, a good job with the resources that we have. Somehow you need to let people see how this is different. Still subject to, at least for me, to the same test, which is it's still got to deliver, an acceptable premium level of service. It's got to do all of those kinds of things. But if it does, we've got to get people over their aversion to the word bus, because buses look now, even though they're prettier and more modern or whatever, they look fundamentally like they did in the 1950s. This is not that. And at some point, we've got to figure it out. So I would encourage you to prepare, produce, develop, whatever you need to do, the materials that allow people to evaluate this fairly. So those are my initial comments. And I'm really looking forward. I expect to go to at least one or more of these sessions, and really looking forward to seeing what people have to say. I think you've done a good job of organizing this and laying it out.
Yeah. Thank you, John, and I'll share, we do have we have public materials, we have videos we're producing. This is a very nuanced, important conversation. In the interest of time, we will share that with all the attendees later. And again, as I stated at the beginning, all three of these are really big projects. A $1 billion BRT project is a significant piece of infrastructure that is a great transit project as well. And all three of them will need a lot of work and significant partnership to get done.
Does that time frame imply, and obviously lots of things can intervene, but does that imply, maybe ask it open-endedly, when do you, and I could ask the administrator this question as well, or MDOT, when do you think we'll be at a point where we can sort of settle on a direction and start to work on implementation?
Yeah, we're looking towards the end of the year.
Is it November, December up there? That's still.
Yeah. And that gives us enough, that gives us an arc to have.
I actually kind of sorry.
That gives us an arc of time to be able to have the open houses, have a dialogue with community associations over the summer, do our peer city tour, take that feedback and make a recommendation to MDOT and state leadership.
Makes sense. Other questions or comments? Administrator Arnold, do you want to say anything?
No, I mean, Caitlin and team are doing a good job, and I encourage folks to come out to open houses. I mean, what you're seeing here is one version. The open houses have a lot of different boards, right? You mentioned trade-offs, like that is entirely what the boards are. So I think it's just a bit of a different conversation there.
Yeah. Thanks.
Great. Thank you for the time this morning.
Yeah, thanks very much. We look forward to being in the loop as you go forward. Okay, let's move on to a presentation on the light rail modernization program from TA. Who is doing that? So that's please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us to present on the light rail modernization program. Kate Sylvester, the administrator of the program delivery. I see that we're running a little bit behind schedule on the agenda this morning, so I will try to go through the slides quickly. Feel free to stop and ask me questions. See something on the slide that I'll cover in detail. So by way of overview, the light rail modernization program is associated with our 2024 $213 million rail vehicle replacement grant to replace our legacy light rail fleet. This really is a generational opportunity to reinvest in our light rail system, our central light rail system. Much of the equipment associated with it and the infrastructure associated with it is in need of state of good repair investment. A lot of it has become obsolete, and it's an opportunity to reinvest the system. The investment is over $1 billion. It is not only the vehicles, it includes the signal system, stations, there's a number of track upgrades that are going to be made alongside of this, and also upgrades to our maintenance facilities so that we can take care of these new vehicles. The 2025 transportation budget that you all were very involved in helping ensure that our needs were represented, fully funds this program. The light rail system, while we are always doing work on it here and there, it has not been modernized since its initial construction and subsequent expansion. If there are riders of the light rail system here, I think it will resonate that vehicles are out of service for all sorts of reasons, contributing to long headways and not the type of reliable service that we expect to be providing. We also have long station dwell times. It takes the vehicles a long time to get in and out of the station because all of our patrons need to go up and down the stairs to get on and off the vehicles. We also have ADA ramp deployments that take a while with the legacy vehicles. And just overall, the accessibility of the system is really hindering its ability to come in and out of stations smoothly. Also, particularly along Howard Street, we have significant signal delays. This is a combination of the light rail signal system being not the most modern technology, as well as Baltimore City traffic signals being quite obsolete as well. So there is transit signal priority along Howard Street, but it is not operating as well as it could with modern equipment. So the program involves replacing the 52 vehicle fleet with fully accessible, modern low floor vehicles, upgrading the maintenance facilities, as I mentioned, updating the power system and the train control, and replacing the Howard Street track, which has, many of you know that this has been something we've been trying to do for a number of years. That track is not in good condition and needs to be replaced. And all 33 light rail stations need to be upgraded to accommodate those new vehicles. You can see in the image there, the sidewalk height, the platform height needs to come to meet the low floor level boarding for the new vehicles to maintain ADA accessibility. So right now we have a number of stairs, or you have to go over to the high block if you're a wheelchair user or you have a stroller or something like that. So this will now be level boarding at all doors, but that does mean that we need to make sure that at every single one of those stations, the platform or the sidewalk height, depending on how you look at it, is level with where that door meets the station. So just a little bit more on the scope. We're breaking it into 4 different pieces, 4 different contracts for delivering the program. The vehicles and train control is what we call tranche 1. It's our first contract. So those vehicles have collision avoidance system, broken rail detection. We also get a training simulator to help our operators not need to actually use a live vehicle to get through all of their training programs. There's the radio-based train control system gets upgraded as well. The second piece is the stations and track. So if we have a contractor going in to do station work, we want them to be able to do the track work that needs to get done too, sort of a dig once approach. That's that ADA compliant boarding, track replacement. We have some grade crossing replacements. That's more track work at all of the stations. The next piece is the maintenance facility. So we will take delivery of the new vehicles at our Cromwell maintenance facility in Anne Arundel County. So there will be sort of a accessory building designed to take the delivery of these vehicles and some additional track where we do the testing. And some minor upgrades to the existing facility. A lot of work can also still be done in that original facility. And then the fourth piece of it is the traction power substations. We have 26 of these traction power substations. They look like little gray or light brown huts that you see along the alignment. That's what provides all the power to move the trains. These are prefabricated buildings that are really in need of upgrade and replacement. As part of doing this, we upgrade the power capacity of the system a little bit. That enables us to run more frequent trains in the future. So we need more power in order to run more frequency, and that is part of this piece of the program. The benefits of the program are extensive: improved accessibility and reduced dwell time. As I just mentioned, ability to run more frequent trains and keep them reliable, faster boarding, faster travel times. Overall, the combination of the shorter dwell times throughout the system and the signal improvements that we are working with Baltimore City primarily to make could save 10 to 15 minutes of travel time. Not a lot of people are traveling Hunt Valley to Glen Burnie, so each trip, gets a portion of that, but 10 to 15 minutes of travel time on a light rail trip is fantastic, right? That really is a significant impact in people's travel patterns and times that they may choose to take light rail. The economic component of this too is huge. Central light rail is an economic driver for the region. It is a real benefit for Baltimore that we have this fixed rail system. A lot of cities don't have that. First and foremost, we want to keep that from becoming obsolete. We want to keep that as an amenity and an attraction that we have in our region. So that's sort of the investment needed in the rail system itself. That also brings the economic opportunity associated with jobs generated by this amount of construction. But even beyond that, I think everyone has been talking for years about the opportunity to revitalize Howard Street in particular. And we know that this investment of this scale in the light rail system is an opportunity to catalyze some of that reinvestment and vitality that we're all working to bring back to Howard Street. So this has been a focus for the MTA team to partner with both public sector and private sector stakeholders on Howard Street about how do we really use this investment opportunity to achieve that broader economic goal. So this program is moving full speed ahead. We are in what we call our procurement year. So the vehicle and train control contract is in market. We'll get the proposals on that this summer. The stations and track is a progressive design build contract. We have gone through the qualification stage and have a short list. And the RFP will go out to that short list later this spring. Traction power substation proposals are in evaluation now. Maintenance facility comes next. And as we're doing all of these procurement activities, we're doing a lot of stakeholder work to sort of lay the ground and make sure we're ready to hit the ground running when we have our contractors on board. So a little bit more about our partner coordination. We've established an interagency work group with our Baltimore City partners. Some of the notes here of the focus of that work group, we need to be ready to make timely decisions when we have contractors on board. So we're talking about some of the more complex issues now and making sure we can all reach alignment early. We're doing significant amounts of construction work in the central business district of the city. There are going to be some really challenging construction impacts. So starting to identify mitigation strategies, set expectations, think about how we engage the neighbors and stakeholders is another piece of this. And there's a lot of different city agencies with different programs and plans and CIP projects in and around Howard Street area in particular. So we're all getting aligned on what does everyone have planned? What are the opportunities there? How do we align all the parallel efforts to minimize the disruption for all of the businesses and residents and property owners, and also try to build on each other's investments and success rather than be in each other's way. The focus right now is Baltimore City. You'll see that we're soon going to be doing more of this engagement with Baltimore County and Anne Arundel County as well. We've been through the interagency coordination. We're able to attend and be a partner alongside of the Baltimore City Planning Department. They recently held a Howard Street Visioning event. You can see just the attendance there was fantastic. People are really interested and excited about this. And that was a great opportunity to get down to sort of block level. What are people, what is happening with the different buildings along Howard Street? What are the investments that are coming? What are the goals? And ideas and how do we create a sort of consistent vision for the public environment along that Howard Street and make sure that our light rail investments are aligned with that. Just this talks a little bit more about the specifics of our coordination with Baltimore City, aligning our programs and investments I've mentioned, starting to lay out how we're going to do permitting and design reviews and things in a streamlined way. We're also looking at some of the traffic safety and operational challenges that the light rail has on Howard Street are things that could be done in the short term. And if we all agree that there's safety and sort of traffic signal changes that can be made, there's no reason to wait 5, 6, 7 years for those changes. Let's look at what we can do to get those things done, you know, in the next year, right? So if we're just talking about putting up a sign or changing a signal phasing, and that's going to provide a better light rail trip, and really the safety benefits are the major focus, because we just have real challenges with the car and light rail vehicle conflicts along Howard Street that we're looking for what we're calling quick build opportunities. And then finally, just to close with where we are in terms of the schedule of the overall program. So I mentioned we're going through the various procurements. We'll continue with agency coordination and trying to refine our ideas for quick build work along Howard Street and determine what the schedule and contracting mechanisms for that are going to be, and then expand the agency coordination work from Baltimore City to Anne Arundel and Baltimore counties. We'll be continuing with stakeholder engagement, developing more broad communication tools and materials. We've had some good engagement with some of the larger institutional stakeholders along the light rail corridor about how we can engage with the broad public and sort of market the opportunity and build awareness about the light rail modernization program. So we'll be starting to put together that and roll that out. And then on the more sort of technical in-house side, we are continuing to build our team's readiness to deliver this successfully. We're training up our staff on alternative delivery. We're making sure that our manuals and procedures are appropriate to sort of design, build, delivery, and working with agency partners on sort of pre-permitting activities. Overall program timeline you see here, this, as I think I've mentioned to this group before, this is the scale of investment is really a sort of a 10-year investment program. So we're in the early stages of it now. In the sort of 2028 to 2030 time period is when neighbors will be seeing construction work on the stations to make sure that those stations are ready to take the new vehicles when they come in. So we're subject to the global supply chain for light rail vehicles. So we'll know a lot more once we get our final proposals in for the light rail vehicles later this year. But we're currently expecting that we could take delivery of our first light rail vehicles in 2030. And that's a several year process. So you can see where this plays out over sort of a 10-year time frame. And that is what we have on the light rail program, but I would be happy to take any questions or comments.
Thanks very much. It's I mean, obviously, we just wanted an update, right? It's important, very important note of activity. And this is not a question for today, but going forward, unless you can answer it brief today, but it's a longer answer. And the question is, why does it take so long? And I'm just I'm literally trying to understand what are the critical path items that are taking the longest. It would be interesting, I think, for us to understand that better. You know, is it contracting, you know, procurement? Is it the construction of the actual physical cars on one hand, facilities on the other? Is it plant? I mean, there are all infinite number of those, and this is, I know you're an expert in this, but it would be useful to me just to understand what really is the biggest, or what's the hierarchy of things that cause things like this to take as long as they do.
I mean, I think it's all of those things.
I know, but that answers.
But so we're in the procurement phase on all of the contracts now. And so the Cromwell Maintenance Facility has to be ready to take delivery of the first vehicle. But that is a shorter contracting timeframe than some of the more complex parts of this. So at this point in time, you know, getting our vehicle contract out on the street was the critical path, which we did, because there's a very extensive question and answer period, because before those vendors are comfortable committing to price to us,
Sure.
right, they really need to invest time and resources in preparing their bids. Then once we get through the contracting phase, getting the Cromwell Maintenance Facility under construction and ready to take delivery of the vehicles becomes probably critical path, but the vehicles at that point are in design and construction at the same time. And if we have a disruption in the production or the design, you know, that it really is a parallel work on all of these different pieces.
If I could throw in here, so WMATA is buying Hitachi rail cars. That award was announced in 2001, and they're anticipating the first cars going into service in 2008. Like, that is the schedule.
Yeah.
So the schedule that we're
Yeah.
showing here, I mean, like, I think railcar manufacturing, I guess my point is, like, there's not anything that MTA is doing, like, this is just the industry.
Well, no, let
railcar
me be
manufacturing.
absolutely clear for anybody who's listening. This is not directed as a criticism in the slightest at MTA. This is just, please help me understand why it takes this long. I'm just literally trying to understand what the components are, what's a predicate to what, and what really takes. And I mean, I assume that it's all of those things to some degree, but I'm just trying to understand this. I have complete faith in MTA's capacity, your capacity, the administrator's capacity.
I guess what I'm trying to explain, like, that's what I'm trying to explain, like, it's railcar manufacturing, like, and my example is just that this, you know, right down the street, another. Yeah, that is the railcar manufacturing. I've said this before, you don't just go to CarMax and buy a rail car, they have to design them for each agency, and that is the longest part of the process.
Okay.
If I can add, I think one of the things, again, trying to take, you know, global reality and then what is MTA, and then again, what does this body do? I think one of the key roles of this body is that because of the layering of the and kind of the critical path feeding into the next, and that it all has to layer and run in parallel. Every time something shifts on the procurement side, it shifts you all the way back to the beginning. And so I do think it matters that when a supply chain, when some piece of equipment or a contract has a flex that goes outside of the scope of what's allowable because the global supply chain has been blown up, that means that they have to go all the way back and it goes through procurement again. And that then delays where you were in line with the railcar manufacturer. So I do think that's a place where this body can have an impact in terms of where and how does MTA, particularly on the capital investment side, get hit on their ability to make a decision and stay with that decision so that they can keep their place in line in the global order of manufacturing. So that would be one of the elements I think matters.
Okay, other questions for Kate? Thank you very much, appreciate it. All right, we'll move on. I know time is, we're tight, but we will get through these items and we need to get through, they're all important. Let's hear an MTA on the student transportation.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Stacy Weisfeld, and I'm really excited to talk about the efforts that we've been making for the student transit action plan. And so we will be putting out the plan later on, but I wanted to give an overview of what's in the plan and what to expect. So the purpose of this is is 4 things. One is to share information on what we've already been doing and our work with Baltimore City Schools to get students to school on time, because we do a lot and I don't think enough people understand how much that we do on that. And then it's also to align internal and external stakeholders, make sure everybody's talking, guide MTA and stakeholder decision making, and then ensure that our work reflects experiences, needs, and the voices of the students it serves. And the plan will contain an understanding of both the challenges and the opportunities in providing transit service, a summary of, as I mentioned, our current efforts, and then a roadmap for future improvements. So a little background on our involvement and why MTA is a preferred transit provider for the schools. So Baltimore implemented a school choice system in 2005. So middle school and high school students can attend their preferred schools rather than the schools closest to them. And that provides them a lot of amazing opportunities, but it also means that they have to travel sometimes long distances to get to their preferred school. And because of school start and stop time variability and after school activities, it is a very complex transit environment. And unlike other Maryland districts, Baltimore City Schools doesn't provide most students yellow school bus services after elementary school. And so for that reason, and for many others, MTA, like I said, serves as the preferred school transit provider. And so I'm going to talk a bit about our current efforts, starting with operations, and so basically getting students to school. So something that some people don't realize is that federal law prohibits us from providing a separate service just for schools. And so to make sure that we are still providing students with as good transit as we can, we created a tripper service, which are enhanced routes that deviate from regular routes to better serve school trips. And so we really focus on bell times and help with after school activities. And this is still open to the public, so it abides by federal law, but it's just really, it is enhanced service for when students need it the most. And we operate 30 tripper bus routes that provide 180 trips to schools. And we adjust service times 3 times a year based on a lot of factors, including ridership, travel times, and requests from parents, students, and operators. And currently, we have a Safe Passage program. And so that is a partnership with the Mayor's Office, MTA Police, and community partners. And so we provide increased supervision and train safety personnel on designated routes during student arrival and dismissal time. And so this helps reduce risks for students commuting to school, especially if part of their trip includes walking. An example of that is we created supplemental service routes because of after school activities for Baltimore City College High School so that they would have safe transit. We have a partnership at Mondawmin Metro. And so Baltimore Police have been there for a long time, but now we're going to be partnering with the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement to improve the experience at that station. And that's with citizen-driven community engagement teams. They'll be deployed during school dismissal so that they can build relationships with students, reduce disorderly conduct, and reduce the need for police enforcement. We have our rider code of conduct. So that outlines behaviors that are encouraged and expected, behaviors that are prohibited, and consequences for engaging prohibited behavior. And we were so excited to work with the Youth Transit Council on this. They helped develop the code itself and also the public awareness campaign to make sure that the code is relatable and understandable. And a bit about some apps that we have for a better experience. So we have our new CSA app, where people can chat directly with MTA police dispatchers instead of making a call, which, can be kind of intimidating if there's something going on. They can discreetly message via text and via the app. And it shows their location for a fast response, and you can share information anonymously. And then we have the Transit app, which is a free app so you can help plan your trip, and it links directly to Charm Pass. Additional efforts are updated fare policies. Students and children under 12 can ride MTA for free anytime. We've lengthened our transfer time. And then we have Balance Be More, which is the bus stop optimization initiative aimed at improving efficiency by adjusting bus stop locations. And so that helps also with the tripper routes. And then our current outreach, engagement, education efforts. We do so much community outreach. We have MTA staff that attend events all year round to strengthen relationships, to provide information, to get feedback. And so we go to back to school events, we go to community meetings, we go to school relocation meetings. We do workshops for bilingual students. And the action plan will include a lot more information on this. It would have taken me a very long time in this presentation to go into everything that we do, but we are out there all of the time. And our police are out there all the time. They have a lot of community initiatives. They interact with the public daily to help navigate the system. They attend community meetings, and they attend and host events. So examples that I have here are the Special Olympics Torch Run, National Night Out events, Adopt a Family Christmas Tree event, and the Special Olympics Polar Bear Plunge. And as I've mentioned a bit, we have our Youth Transit Council. And so that's an advisory group of 12 to 15 Baltimore area students, ages 14 to 18. They have to attend school in the Baltimore area, live within an MTA service area, and be able to participate for the entire school year. And so they share their experiences, they offer feedback. It's a great educational opportunity so they can learn how Maryland's transportation system works. And they gain opportunities for career exploration because, as we all know, there are a lot of different ways that you can have a career in transit. And past activities include, as I mentioned, the rider code of conduct, discussions with the Red Line team, a tour of bus operations, meeting Holly, lots of opportunities. We have our Youth Works program, which connects young people ages 14 to 21 with summer job opportunities to gain exposure to different career paths. This is run by the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, and we host students every summer across all of our offices. Sorry, I'm like losing my voice today, so give me one second. All right, so we also have the Red Line internship program. It's a 6-week paid opportunity to gain experience in the transportation industry. So interns in the 2025 program helped redesign Red Line open house boards with teen-centered messaging and visuals. I won't go through all of these, but they contributed to station area maps, designed a station area plan, and created a final capstone group presentation. And this year, we're excited to welcome 6 high school students and 2 Morgan State College students. More than 100 students have participated throughout the extent of this program. And we coordinate with city schools all of the time. So year-round, often weekly, we meet with principals and other staff to discover service needs. We work with the Baltimore City School Police and community members to talk about safety. We have engagement staff who meet with students and parents and members of the community. And an MOU is currently under development. The action plan will be consistent with the MOU, but it is not part of those conversations. All right, and so then I'll go into some things that we have in the works. So with operations and getting kids to school, we have fall service changes coming up. I'm not going to go through all of these, but just wanted to point out that we, as I mentioned earlier, adjust services based on school relocations, expansions, bell time adjustments, and running time adjustments. We have transit priority initiatives. I won't go through all of these, but we are working with the City of Baltimore to make our transit faster and more efficient, and that will definitely benefit students as they're on their way to school. And then we have our updated transit travel shed map. So we've had this for a while, but we have a lot of new exciting changes. And so this is an online tool that shows students the average travel time to and from different schools. So this is a great aid when students are considering school choices. They can see how long it will take them to get to each school because it is a really big consideration when they are deciding what schools to go to. And we're out there at school events like the annual school choice fair and at different community fairs to make sure that people have access and are aware of this tool. We're working on a safety ambassador pilot, which will establish a visible and hospitality-focused MTA workforce on the system to provide improved customer experience and strengthen rider perception of safety, help riders navigate the system, and it'll allow us to generate real-time observations about the state of the transit system and just provide additional support and capacity of operations during service disruptions, events, and all of that. And they will be able to communicate directly with police if assistance is needed. And so we're going to start on rail, metro, light rail, and potentially expand to bus. And so the goal is to benefit all riders and really help with the feeling of safety. And so we really hope that this benefits students. And then with outreach and engagement and education, we're working on a different ambassador program that's in schools. And so we're working with the school districts to see what this looks like. We want to really take recommendations from them because they know what the students need. And so each school would have a staff member or a student serving as an ambassador. And so students can go up to them and ask questions and, like how to ride, what best routes they can take. We know that it might be intimidating if students have questions to reach out to MTA. And so this way they'll have someone in the schools. And then we're creating how to ride videos. So different short videos that we can put on social media about trip planning, safety and security, things like that. We'll be talking to students to see what they really need, what questions they have and what videos would be helpful. And then we're, things as simple as putting wayfinding boards in the schools to get more information out there. And then we'll be coordinating with the schools to have multi-language materials, to get the rider code of conduct in their materials so that it's easily accessible to students. And then in conversations with students, we actually, they had a great idea where they said they would like to have better relationships with the operators. They don't really get to, talk to them and understand why they're doing their job and what their favorite part of their job is and things like that. And so the students actually recommended that they do operator interviews. And we can post that on social media. It'll be a great way to get the students involved and just improve relationships and communication. So we're really excited to work with the schools to get that done. And so next steps for all of this, we're going to continue coordination with the schools to receive feedback from students, parents, and staff on the draft plan that we're putting together. Then we'll finalize and promote the plan and work internally with stakeholders on the plan components. And so I know I went through that all really quickly because we're short on time. So if anybody has any questions that there's not time for today, please feel free to reach out to me. We will come back. Like I said, we're working on the plan itself. This is just letting you all know what will be in it. And so we will be back to share our.
Thanks. I know it was brief, but very comprehensive and great set of slides. Thank you. I'm going to defer first to Scott since you've been leading this effort.
I described this at the last meeting as a calculus problem.
Yes, it definitely feels like that.
It is complex beyond its understanding, beyond, I think, our normal understanding of the sets of challenges that you're working with in limited bus availability or service, and an expanding set of services to provide, and expanding area of services to provide. So I compliment what you referenced. I mean, the only thing you can do, the only thing you can do is over communicate.
Yes.
Is really in the efforts. I did have one question though, on the video part, have you ever worked with wide angle youth media?
So it's funny, you're not the first person to mention that to us. I'm actually going to turn that over to Holly because I know that there were some that you're working on.
I mean, I just think a peer-to-peer, set of communications might be really helpful.
Yeah, so we have worked with them in the past. We don't have them on contract right now. So
Okay.
we're working with MDOT to see if we can find a way to access them contractually because that's the biggest issue with procurement law is we have to make sure we have a legal binding
Of
contract.
course.
And so we're working through that with the goal of working with them.
Yeah. Thank you.
Two quick questions. With the plans, what's the actual schedule for the plan?
So we're saying the next few months, but really, as we've been diving into this, we've been coordinating with the schools and coordinating with partners and whatnot, more and more opportunities keep popping up. And so we want this to be as comprehensive as possible. But we are, like, now that we have this presentation done and we're hoping next few months we'll be able to come back with a draft, because it also depends on, we want to make sure students have a chance to comment on the draft. And so it really depends on the schedule with which we can get out to students and get their feedback as well.
Good. And we'll hopefully we'll put it on the next agenda and you'll have something to update. We can discuss and decide. Distinct from the plan, the MOU, in general terms, what are the contents of the MOU itself versus the plan or any other things that you're working on?
So that's another one I'll turn over to Holly, because I haven't been working on the MOU.
Yeah, so the MOU, I mean, it's essentially updating what we've had previously. So, we've had a number of MOUs over the years, so it just reiterates that we provide service, the information that they're providing to us and what we're providing to them. Some of the changes this time are a goal on both sides to transition to using CharmPass, and so an agreement towards how we're going to work through that. We're also looking at more data sharing, so sharing information on the school trippers that we have with them. But once it is finalized, we'd be happy to share, but it is not gonna change the world, just to be clear, like it's an MOU outlet.
Yeah, no, that's fine, thanks. Well, thanks, this is an important issue for everybody, I mean, substantively and reputationally, for everybody involved, and we wanna make sure that we're doing the most we can, but this is very robust, thank you very much for the presentation, appreciate it. Okay, we're gonna have Mike Kelly from BMC, I think is in the back. Mike's gonna come up and just talk for a few moments about some interesting polling results. And let me say this, and I know that this will be disappointing, but Don, I think we're gonna defer your proper presentation because I don't wanna rush your legislative wrap up. I would ask you we'll talk about what you can send out. And then in July, we'll give you first dibs so that you're not rushed through your presentation.
Okay, thanks, John. So, be talking over a picture of Don's face to everybody.
Yeah,
that's. All right, so for 3 years, BMC has taken on an annual issue survey that we call the Pulse. And each year we have tested a number of transit-related questions. I just wanted to share those results quickly. This is the website. It's at bmcpulse.org. We have more details here if folks want to see what some of the prior results look like. These are the categories that we look at in the entire poll. I'll talk about the traffic, transportation, and transit, but we do go over the rest of these things as well. This is the full background on what we sampled. I'll keep moving through that. And then here are the sample sizes. I will say that we tried to get a representative sample size that is statistically relevant in each of the jurisdictions. And here are, we have a slide on the background demographics you guys can review when there is more time. So really quickly on the traffic and transportation, one of the first things we test is what people value about their region. And there's there's a bunch of contradictory messages here, but our region has, in each of the polls that we've done, parks and trails and public rec and arts and culture have scored very, very high. Traffic and transportation are always at the lower end, although you'll see 42% and even 37% show some level of satisfaction, which isn't bad as these things go. Public transportation itself scoring a satisfaction rate of 42%. The next thing we look at is what the top issues are for people. So no matter where traffic and transportation score in terms of how people rank them, you'll see down at the bottom here, it is at the bottom of the list of overall concerns. We allow people in the poll to give us their top 2 issues, and the economy is always up there, crime and drugs is up there, sort of public cost things. So there's a relative amount of satisfaction, and I think more telling, traffic and transportation don't pop up as things that really, really need to be fixed. In terms of traffic, there is high level of dissatisfaction. This has grown since the collapse of the Key Bridge, especially in Baltimore County and Baltimore City, just something that we've tracked over time. You can also see in Queen Anne's, for about 15 Saturdays and Sundays a year, the traffic is horrendous, and that always pops up on this. I jumped right to the lead. We did ask this year, we tested the idea of a 1 cent sales tax to pay for transit improvements. And our pollsters told us not to ask it. The pollster then said, if we did ask it, we're not going to want to share the results, and that it would kill any chance of ever having transit-related tax revenue. And the results came back surprisingly positive. The dark blue is the strong support, and light blue is somewhat support. And overall, there was a 58% positive response. In Baltimore County, Baltimore City, Anne Arundel, and Howard, the 4 jurisdictions likely to be impacted by this. The response was high, especially in Baltimore City at 69%, with 40% of the population showing strong support for the idea.
Generationally, it's also interesting.
Generationally, absolutely, yeah. The younger you get, the more support there is. Although the level of strong support you'll see is still pretty high, even in some of the older demographics. So I will say this was one data point in one poll. I have not seen this publicly polled anywhere else, but it is something to think about. I know as a state and as a region, you know, we've had various iterations of the transit funding conversation, and this is something to piece together with other polling data that comes out in the future. This has certainly bounced around the legislature, the idea of allowing regions to tax themselves for these sorts of improvements. And this is sort of the first public data point I've seen that shows there may be interest in it. Willingness to use public transportation over time has been pretty stable. Our poll went out in March. I'd be very curious to see in May, with gas prices being what they are, if the willingness to use public transportation is getting higher. That's typically a economic cycle that makes transit very popular. But it's good to see that the willingness is there. And if you look at the county level on this question, in Baltimore City and the surrounding jurisdictions, the numbers are certainly higher. And again, to Scott's point earlier, the generational point, younger residents are much more willing and interested in riding public transportation. Finally, we asked which 1 or 2 things would make you more likely to use public transportation, at least some of the time. And convenience and safety, followed by frequency. Every time we've asked this question, those are the things that are at the top. This is particularly true in Baltimore, how important it is to you to have public transportation stop near your residence. In the city and even in the county, 61% of the respondents did say it was important. So all of these things put together clearly show an interest in transit. They show an interest in improved transit, and on some level, an interest in supporting transit. And asking somebody on the phone if you'd like to pay an extra penny for things, they'd say sure. Putting it on a ballot for referendum might be a different thing, but it's at least a positive sign moving forward. So that is a very quick summary of this. Full details are on the website, and we have even more detail we can share if any of the members are interested in this down the road.
Could you, what was the poll question on the additional tax was 1 penny on the sales tax, a conditional, I just don't remember what the actual question was.
Would you support or oppose paying an additional 1 cent sales tax in Maryland to pay for transit improvements to reduce traffic and create jobs?
I think those are surprising numbers. And the only thing I would say, and we can obviously at some point we can talk more depth about this. Presumably, if you substituted the word transportation for the word transit, you would have even more positive response, because there are people who are not necessarily transit, but who are interested more broadly in transportation. And that, of course, implicates the whole question about how the money comes in and how it gets divided up, et cetera. But, one approach is to try and find a revenue approach or a revenue enhancement for transit. The other is to more broadly find a revenue enhancement for transportation, which is what the Train Commission was up to. and then figure out a system to equitably divide it among modes so that, for example, one mode is not favored, but it just, if those are the numbers for transit, it makes me think that the numbers for transportation, subject to figuring out how to have the money equitably divided, would be even higher, which is surprising to me.
In as much as poll respondents would differentiate between the two.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But I think this is, I would stress again, this is one data point. Certainly this commission is probably happy to see the results of it.
Yeah.
But it's something that's gonna have to be fleshed out over
Yeah,
time.
thank you.
It's also an inverse, pretty much an inverse of their polling, of their voting numbers. And that would make the difference. I mean, I think you could, if the young people, the 20 to 39 groups increase their voting percentage, you wouldn't have to worry about that much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I think this would be really interesting data to share in terms of universities, so they can see this, as to their students and higher ed, be it 4-year or 2-year, other training programs, because it's really showing their interest in transit.
Yeah, I will share, Tony, specifically the more detailed stuff we have on age cohorts as well, because I think for your folks.
Yeah.
It'll be really important.
Thank you, Mike. Other questions for Mike? Good, thanks.
Thank you all.
So Don, I think we can send written updates on the remaining agenda items, and then I promise you that you will have top of the agenda for a really excellent set of, and I encourage you to look at that, an excellent set of materials regarding a summary of the session and the things that were successful, and also frankly, the things that were not, which is in some respects also interesting. So we'll do that, but I think in the interest of time, I don't want to put you under that pressure. So having said that, the item last on the agenda is always public participation. Is there anybody here who wishes to say anything to the commission for the record? Seeing none. Is there anything else, Don?
We have public meetings coming up for our TIP Transportation Improvement Program, the we being the BRTC, the B, Baltimore Regional Transportation Board, the MPO has to put together a TIP, a long-range transportation plan and a short-range transportation plan. That's the transportation implementation plan. So we're having public hearings for the TIP coming up, and we will have information out there. It is on our website. There should be a page in your package, but it'll be on in our meeting notes.
Great, thanks. And one last thing I wanted to say is, and some of you may have seen it, but Transit Choice, I see Robin and Jimmy here, had a meeting just this week.
Yesterday.
And the featured speakers were Don, who gave an excellent presentation on potential transportation funding options compared to other states and ways that we can do that. And then also Delegate Edelson, who gave a sort of review of the session on the things of interest to him. Transit Choice always does a nice job of creating a recording as well as slides. So some of you may get it anyway, but I'll make sure Transit Choice that Don gets it, he probably already has it. And if you could just with a little cover note, send that around to the commission and our stakeholder list, that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really well done. Okay, anything else from members of the commission? Not? Adjourn? Okay, let's adjourn. Thank you very much.